Welcome to the MilSpouse Coffee House Podcast. Your podcast baristas Leslie and Brittany have a latte on their minds.
My kid gets in the dishwasher, that's the first thing she grabs is the knife. To use all the help. All the help. Am I the only one that's weirded out by that situation?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna ask.
You don't have to get dressed. You can do online hungover, y'all.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Here are your hosts, Leslie and Brittany.
Hey there, fellow military spouse Esther Inman here, and I am so excited to be sponsoring the MilSpouse Coffee House podcast. While my husband was an active duty Marine, I figured out real quick that a traditional corporate job was not going to work with deployments happening at the drop of a hat and this PCS lifestyle. I needed a career that could move with me and, as a mom, something that allowed me the flexibility of not being chained to a desk all day. I started working online as a virtual assistant and have since helped almost 1,000 women work online as VAs too. I want to extend the invitation to you to join the Work From Anywhere, Military Life Takes You revolution happening right now. I have so many goodies for you to help you kick off your online career, but start with my free class at 90dayva.com. It has a workbook and legit online job resources. No degree or experience needed. Check it out at 90dayva.com. See you in class.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of MilSpouse Coffee House.
Welcome.
Good morning.
We are so, you hear a third voice this morning, and we are so excited to have Sheena with the Dear MilFamily Podcast on with us today. Sheena is actually one of the original MilSpouse Podcast hosts. You definitely need to go check out the Dear MilFamily Podcast. Both Leslie and I have been guests on her show. And actually, when Sheena and I recorded, 2.5 years ago or something?
Yeah.
Maybe 3 years ago, I got inspired to start my own podcast after being on hers. So she really is the reason why this whole MilSpouse Coffee House is going and everything. So we owe that to you.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sheena. Way to go. OG.
Oh, thank you.
OG. Did y'all know that I originally
feel like
thought...
an OG.
No, you are. But I originally thought OG meant original girl. I didn't realize that. I thought that's what it stood for.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I know. I know.
That's so funny. How long? Okay, at what point did you realize it was not girl?
It probably was earlier this year that I was like, oh, it's
Oh,
a girl.
whoa.
Yeah. No, I know.
Thanks,
I had never heard that until, I guess, whenever Teen Mom OG came out. That's when I was like, what is OG?
Oh.
I don't get this.
But anyway, whatever. That's not the point of this conversation.
It was a good one, though.
I know.
Funny.
So, Sheena, real quick, for those of our listeners that aren't familiar with your podcast, do you want to just share a little bit about you and your podcast, of course, because we want to make sure that we send some listeners your way as well. And then we'll go ahead and jump into our topic.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the Dear MilFamily Podcast just came out of this idea of wanting to include everybody in military life, because sometimes we think of military members and military families as just a certain way, husband and wife, and the husband is the one who is serving, and they have 2.5 kids and a dog, and it's not like that at all. We're all different, and the military community is so diverse. And I just wanted to start hearing people's stories, and I wanted to start recording different stories from people of what military life is like for them. So I really like to get those stories from people who feel maybe like their story isn't reflected in that stereotypical ideal. So I've done an episode on a transgender military family. I've done an episode on a homosexual couple that is in the military and what it was like before and after. Don't ask, don't tell. So I really try and bring everybody's perspective into it. I try.
That's really important. I love that. That's really important. Yeah. So that's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and everybody can find you at is it dearmilfamily.com is your website?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
And then on Stitcher, Podbean, all of those kind of good
Yeah,
things.
all the major ones, yeah, for sure.
Cool.
All the places.
All the places.
All the podcatcher places, yes.
Well, guys, today Sheena is with us because we're going to be talking about being an autism mom, and Sheena has experience with that. So we want to learn what it's like for you, Sheena, and what that means and what it is, and just how it can resonate with our audience, and we just want to talk about it.
Yeah, I think, and probably moms of kids with other special needs could probably relate to my experience as well. We found out my son was autistic in February of this year, 2019. And, we kind of always knew he had ADHD. And we just kind of wanted to see what would happen when he got into kindergarten, how he would handle it. And his teacher was like, I see the ADHD, but I feel like there's something else there too. And we were kind of like, oh, really? And so we just always accepted Colin for Colin. We were just like, oh, that's just Colin. That's just who he is.
Right.
But yeah, so we went and did the diagnostic testing in February. And it was kind of pretty clear at that diagnostic appointment, watching him, because it's just a bunch of like games that they kind of play, but
that was actually gonna be my question, is what does that look like?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's just a bunch of games that they play with them. Like they want them to see if they have an imagination, or they can do imaginative play, if they can solve a puzzle from an example, if they can they want to watch them as they interact socially with the person that's running the tests. And so they're just observing behavior basically.
Right.
And then but also they have us fill out so many questionnaires about his behavior. Like, I swear to God, we answered the same question like 10 times in 10 different ways. Like, didn't we already answer this? Like, come on. So after we filled out the surveys, we were kind of like, oh, maybe we're kind of seeing some things, but maybe. But yeah, so he got diagnosed after that with ADHD and autism. And after we got him on ADHD medication, his autistic traits really started coming out after that.
Really
interesting.
Yes, it was so crazy because I was just like, I don't know, I don't really see the autism. And like, yeah, I guess kind of. But then as soon as we got him on medication, it was like, whoa, yeah, I do see it now. He has a hard time keeping eye contact. He, he has a really hard time controlling his emotions. And it became really clear because a lot of autistic people need or would like to have a predictable schedule.
Right.
They don't like surprises. They don't, they don't want anything. It's really hard for them to be flexible. They call it being rigid. And so it became really clear to me one morning as I was driving him to school, and we were like there super early. And I was like, oh, well, let's just, take a little drive and we'll come back and it'll be fine. And he got so angry, like he was banging on the windows and like, it's a temper tantrum, really, is what it is. But you don't really expect a 6-year-old at that point to really be doing that, and so it became really clear after that he does have autism. And so it was kind of like, oh, okay, wow, we're doing this. We're really doing this. So we got him into therapy, and therapy has been amazing and super helpful. He's just grown leaps and bounds since he's been in therapy.
That's great. How have you been doing since then? How do you feel? That's kind of a big question. I know.
Where do I start?
I'm sure it's all kinds of different emotions.
Oh my goodness. It's so many different emotions. I feel like you go through the grieving process in a way because you think, your child is going to be one way, or their life is going to look a certain way. I never was like, oh, he's going to be a lawyer, he's going to be a doctor, or anything like that. I just want him to be happy, whatever he does. But it's kind of like it's kind of like the grieving process, because you just realize your child's life is not going to go the way that you had maybe envisioned it.
I've heard that before, grieving from special needs parents. Because you realize like that's not what all of your plans, like especially, I think like all of us when we're pregnant, like we have these like dreams. And then, I've heard the word grieving, which I find is just a really interesting way to put it. But I totally see it.
What kind of mom you want to be, right? Like you think about like, oh, I'm going to be this kind of mom. I'm going to do these things with my kids and whatnot.
That didn't happen for me.
Yeah, you get into it and you're
There's a lot more yelling than I thought.
Same. So, I just, I definitely had a depressive episode where I was able to function still and like, get up and take care of lunches and take them to school, and I have 2 boys. I definitely went through a depressive episode where I was, upset and crying and just having a hard time doing anything that I wanted to do. I wasn't interested in anything. I really felt like I just wasn't the mom that he needed. Like he needed a different mom, not me. He needed somebody else, somebody who could really handle his emotions, because I have anxiety and it's just really hard when he has those big emotions, because I don't know what to do sometimes. So I went back, I've gone to therapists off and on over the years. And so after he got diagnosed, I started going back into therapy, and that has really helped. And I started taking medication daily to help with my depression too. And that was, for me, that was the best decision to go on medication. I know some people don't want to, or, aren't interested in that. But for me, it was the best thing that I could have done for myself, was just to get through that and get over that hump. Yeah.
You got to do what you got to do.
Right. Good for you for recognizing all of it.
Oh, right.
I think a lot of, especially in the military community, especially if you're by yourself, deployment, all that stuff, it's really easy to isolate yourself and just not ask for help and not, take the initiative to get on medication, or even like initiative to exercise. Exercise is great for people, but it's like when you're depressed and you can't even get out of bed, that's the last thing you want to do is put on different clothes and go for a walk. It takes a lot to do that.
Sheena, are you in any like parent support or mom support groups or anything like that? Or is that something that's available?
So, here in the DC, the capital region, the national capital region, they have another acronym, NCR.
Add it to the list.
Yeah, exactly. They have a lot of support groups.
Okay.
So I haven't really got connected with especially like with the Air Force, there's the Airmen and Family Readiness Center. They have support groups too. I just, everything is so far away and you have to drive here a lot and it takes forever to get anywhere. So I don't go to any of those support groups, but luckily his elementary school does have a special needs group that partners with the PTA, and we do a lot of get-togethers. And so there's, a mom of a kiddo with Down syndrome. There's a mom of a kiddo with food allergies, and we just talk about all the different struggles that we all go through, and it's so helpful to talk to other people who understand.
Yeah, that's amazing that's available to you. So I'm really glad that you're utilizing that.
I like that the PTO is involved there.
Yeah.
I've never seen that with a PTA. It's amazing that they have that and they're doing it, because it's like, parents need this.
Did you say PTO?
I did. What is that? It's another acronym.
I think it's organization. Because I saw you like looking like, did I say PTO? Yeah, so it must be parent teacher organization. Yeah.
But,
they do the same thing.
It's the same. Tomato.
Right. That's fine.
PTA. So, well, good. I'm glad that you have that support. That's really awesome that you're actually utilizing it, too, because a lot of times there are those support groups, and kind of getting into it is the first step, and it's hard to take that first step. So that's good.
Yeah, it's always hard to put yourself out there and meet new people. And you sometimes think like, oh, nobody else is like me and has my experience. But you would be surprised how much you can relate to other people, even if you come from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic statuses. Like, you can really connect over, if your child has the same diagnosis, or even if they don't, even if your child just has a individualized education plan. There's another
Right.
acronym in IEP.
IEP. Oh, is that what IEP stands for? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, that makes sense.
We're learning all kinds of acronyms
I know.
So it's amazing to see how much you actually do have in common and what you can bond over.
Right.
Yeah,
Strangely
it
enough.
really is. Yeah, no.
Well, and having someone that maybe you can just text at the end of the day and say, today was really hard.
Mhm.
This happened and this happened, and what do I do? Or I just need somebody to just send this text message. I just need to press send on this text message, just so somebody knows how frustrated I am. So that's
Right, because they can say, I understand and
Yeah.
actually understand.
Yeah.
Because that's like one thing that I kind of find awkward is if somebody vents to me about something that I just can't relate to, it's like, how do you respond? Because you can't say I understand because you don't,
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to have those people in your corner regardless of what the issue is in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Well, and it's also
Yeah.
important for others who aren't experienced in it to learn about it, I think. And that's
Right.
one of the
Mhm.
reasons why I thought we should talk about this, because I don't know anything about it as a
Mhm.
as a person really, or as a parent. So it's important to learn about because I know that growing up, our kids are you're gonna have all kinds of different kids in the classes, and and so it's just important to talk about, I think, in general.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about this other part of it, is that, like, I had an idea of what autism was in my head before my son was diagnosed. And after he was diagnosed, I realized how wrong that idea was.
That's really interesting. What was wrong about? Like, what was the difference that you, or what did you
So
think was wrong?
Before and after.
Yes,
so
thank you.
Before he was diagnosed, I thought, they kind of had like a flat affect. They were more of like a robot. They didn't have any emotions. They couldn't understand emotions. And after I realized there are some people that have autism that talk like a robot. There are some people that are nonverbal. Autism manifests in so many different ways, but there's the main way is that they don't understand social cues and social interactions.
Okay.
So, like, I thought, because I'm an English teacher,
Yeah.
and so I thought, oh, they don't understand idioms like it's raining cats and dogs, or
Right.
Got it.
things like that. But no, they can understand it if you explain it. It's more of, if you say, I'll get to that in a minute, they will come back to you in a minute. They
60
speak
seconds,
everything literally.
Literally, black and white, literal. Yeah.
And if you say you're going to do something, they expect you to do it. And yeah, so they view the world as very black and white. And also, like, if they know that something is a rule, they will follow it. At least my son. I guess I should just speak to my son's experience, but if he knows the rules, again, black and white, he will follow the rule. And he hasn't had really any issues since, at least for first grade, with following the rules. Once we made it clear, like, this is what you need to do, he's like, oh, and then he goes off and he does it. It's amazing once you understand how that child or person, how their autism works. It's amazing how you can connect with them. And it's not that he doesn't understand emotions. He does understand emotions. It's just sometimes he has a hard time reading what other emotions people are showing, So we work on that a lot. At least with his therapist, he works on that a lot.
Yeah, and I would
how do you
imagine
think the person's feeling right now.
Yes, that's what I was just about to say. I would imagine it would be like showing up at a party, and you know how you show up at a party and people, like, there's tension in the air or whatever. He probably can't pick that up, or
Right.
or maybe nervousness from another person or something like that. I'm thinking that maybe because those would be social cues that I would think that would be difficult to
Mm-hmm.
like reading other people. I think might be difficult. I don't know. That's just the way that I'm interpreting it. That could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's part of that, and it's like you have a conversation with him, and right now his big thing is he wants to talk about geography. He wants to talk about all the countries in the world and their capitals and blah, and he'll just go on. And with a normal conversation, you can tell like, oh, it's time to move on to something
Yeah,
else. You know what I
right.
mean? It's time to move past that. He does not read that at all, and he just continues to talk to you about it and continue to ask you questions. And so I've learned that I have to say to him, okay, can we talk about something else now? Can we talk about this? And then he's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. And so
Right.
it's more of like, I don't want to say it's self-centered, but it's more self-centered.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I feel like is actually a blessing and a curse, because I can remember times where like I'm reading the energy of people and I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to do that one thing that I wanted to really, really do
Right.
or to say. Now I'm just going to be like quiet on the corner. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
can take that as a positive. He's
I
going to do whatever
suppose
he
he's
wants
very honest.
and not care about other people and what they
Right.
think.
Oh yeah, he'll say
So
things in front of people. He'll tell everybody everything. Like there is no like
Filter.
the last week our dog was sick,
Stop.
and so I was telling him, your therapist is coming today. Like, she probably doesn't want to hear all the details about how Butter was sick. And you can tell her he was sick. That's fine. But, don't go into what happened in the house.
Right.
So
I can only imagine what happened in the house.
You know what mom did today?
So then he tells her, first of all, he's like, well, why can't I tell her? I'm like,
Right.
some people don't want to hear all the details about how he was sick and what we had to do to help him, and what we had to clean up. Like, some people don't really want to hear about that. And so he was like, oh, okay. So he just told her he was sick, and then that was it. And I was like, wow, if I just explained to him the like social aspect of not wanting to talk about certain things, he'll get it.
Then
and
he
he'll be
understands.
like, oh,
yeah.
okay, that makes sense, I guess. But
Right.
he wants to know all the details.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, y'all, we only have a couple more minutes left, and I feel like we could talk about this forever. I have a question for you, Sheena, and then if there's anything else that you feel like we need to talk about before we sign off, then let's go ahead and cover that. But I wanted to ask you if there is anybody out there that thinks that maybe their child might be autistic, or any advice that you have for anybody just from your personal experience. I'd love if you could share it with us so that our listeners can have that information.
Yeah, definitely. I had some inklings when he was younger. There were some things that I was concerned about, and I would say if you are concerned about it, then go ahead and do the screening as young as you start seeing signs. Go ahead and talk to your pediatrician about seeing a screening or getting a screening done, an autism screening done. Because the earlier that you catch these things and the earlier you put them into therapy, the easier it is for kids, because their brains are so malleable before age 5. And then once they get to, not that they can't change, but it just gets harder and harder the older that they get to help them figure out coping skills. So as soon as you feel like there is something, talk to your pediatrician. But there's also a ton of resources out there. I really like Attitude, which is ADHD, the magazine. It's about ADHD and ADD, but it has a lot of good information just about OCD or autism. It has a lot of, because they feel a lot of people with autism also have ADHD.
Yep.
So a lot of it is pertinent to kids that have autism. So I would suggest that they have an autism screen like checklist that you can go through on their website. So I would definitely suggest that. And then also Autism Speaks is a good organization that you can also do another checklist on there to see if maybe your child fits some of the definitions. And I think if you check yes on any of those, talk to your pediatrician and see if you can get a screening done.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I second that as a early childhood professional back in the day.
That's right.
The earlier, the better.
Forget that, Leslie, you did that. I don't know why I was
degree in that.
I know.
But yeah. I mean, just the brain is so, just like you said, like adaptive when they're little. I mean, it's really amazing how much you can, how easy they pick things up at that.
Yes.
Before 5. Like it's, so
It's
earlier
amazing.
the better.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Thank
well,
you for coming on here today and talking about this,
for
because
all
I do
information.
know that there's a lot of parents out there that are on the struggle bus, and they just, like you said, it's just nice to know that there's somebody else that you can relate to.
Yeah, thanks
Regardless.
for having me. I appreciate you guys letting me talk about it, because I feel the same way. I think people need to know what to do.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Sheena, how can everybody get in touch with you, and where can they find you, and all of that kind of good stuff?
So I have the podcast, Dear MilFamily Podcast, is on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and they can go to dearmilfamily.com, or if they have any questions, feel free to email me at dearmilfamily@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. And of course, you can reach me on any of those social media platforms. I respond probably within a day.
Yeah.
We're all on social media.
24 to 48 hours.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I have a totally random fun fact. Earlier, you were talking about the saying "raining cats and dogs."
Uh-huh.
So I recently learned why that saying exists.
Okay.
Oh.
And so, because back in the day when they had houses where everybody slept like in lofts,
Mhm.
and they had thatch, like the roofing was, it was like straw and that kind of stuff. The cats and dogs would sleep up in the eaves of that. And so when it had bad weather, the rain would soak through and literally like make the cats and dogs fall through the straw.
Oh my God.
And it would fall onto the beds.
That is
Right?
hilarious.
So if it was raining really hard, it was literally raining cats and dogs because they all slept at the top. And that's why people have canopy beds, because the canopies would catch everything that would fall.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Isn't that random and crazy?
Poor pets.
I know. So,
Here it comes.
nice
that's
random
awesome.
thought of the day, right?
Thank
I
you.
love it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, I guess that is a wrap of. Is this our last recording of the year? No.
No, I think we have one more. Yeah, we have one more. But Sheena, thanks so much for being part of our show today. We really appreciate it. And we will definitely catch you over at the Dear MilFamily Podcast.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
And to all our listeners, thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Alrighty. Bye, y'all.
Bye.